Okay, now what the taser does too, it makes your muscles contract, right? This gentleman, pretty muscular. He's in the gym a lot. So we'll see how this goes for him. He's been shaking his hand all day since we got here. One pro. Okay. You okay? Yeah. Okay, now I just want you to one probe hit. One probe hit him, one probe didn't. I did that on purpose. Even if I didn't do it on purpose, I wouldn't tell you I didn't. But anyway, so now keep pressing the trigger. He's getting a little bit of a shock, but we don't have a full connection here, right? Remember I told you we needed 2 points? Okay, and he knows what's going to happen. I can use the end of this taser unit to create that other circuit, create the other point and make a circuit. That was 5 seconds, buddy. In the gym today. How are you? Taking a breath. He's got a little souvenir here for being an intern at the Sheriff's Department. But no, all reality, you know, this guy works out a lot. He's got a lot of muscle mass. If anybody could probably fight something like that, he could. How'd you feel?
Yeah, you ain't fighting that. You went straight down. That was tough. You can't do anything at all. Yeah.
Thanks.
Now, new information on this video that caught the attention of so many people as soon as it was released. A Kenosha police officer seen on camera using a taser to gain control of the situation. And now that Kenosha police are conducting an internal investigation, accusations of improper use of force come to light.
The Police and Fire Commission met today behind closed doors to determine if that officer was following policy. Here's Nick Montez with details.
90 days is what police and fire commissioners are giving the police department for an internal investigation after Officer Brian Ruha is seen on this dash cam video using his taser on Keenan Smith. The taser was already in Ruha's hand when he got out of the car.
We felt the best thing to do was do a thorough investigation so that there's no, in the final analysis, we get a report that shows that they acted properly or didn't act properly. So that
Commission President Ronald Frederick says Ruha's police report doesn't match what was captured on video. The commission also wants to know what was said between the officer and Smith. None of the audio was captured during the tasing.
It was hard to tell what was said there during that time. You know, maybe he felt threatened. Maybe they said something to him that he felt threatened and he had to act quicker.
But Smith was verbally abusive with the officer after his arrest. Police Chief John Morrissey says there is a policy on when officers should use a taser.
You don't have to actively be fighting to be tased. There is a use of force continuum, and they follow that use of force continuum, and a taser is lower on that.
If the officer is found to have used improper force, a punishment remains to be seen. But the commission wants to get to the bottom of it, especially after one of their officers killed Michael Bell Jr. 8 years ago.
How are you going to find out what really happened and unless you have a complete report to it?
And the department has 90 days to finish its internal investigation and present itself in front of the commission. On your side in Kenosha, Nick Montez, today's TMJ4.
Dashcam video caught the officer tasing a man, but music from the squad car drowned out the verbal exchange between that man and the officer. Now the department is trying to fix the problem. Nick Montez has this story.
You might be surprised to learn that police officers here in Kenosha are able to listen to the radio while on patrol, but after an incident was caught on tape, the way they respond This incident caught on camera shows Kenosha police officer Brian Ruha tasing a man within seconds of arriving on scene, but you can't hear what the officer is saying because his music was too loud.
You couldn't really hear any voices and the assumption everybody made, and I guess I did too, that he didn't warn him as he was walking toward him.
Ruha was accused of using excessive force because investigators couldn't hear what he was saying. It took weeks to exonerate him. Police Chief John Morrissey told the Police and Fire Commission president it's okay for officers to listen to music while on patrol.
What did he tell you?
No, we asked him about the music, and he said, well, they listened to the music. The biggest concern is that he didn't turn it off when he got there.
To avoid problems in the future, the department is installing a switch in 45 cars that will mute the AM/FM radio when responding to a call. The way it works is the officer turns on the squad's flashing lights that activates the dash cam video and mutes the AM/FM radio.
If that music was not on, and he had been warning him, and he probably was, and we would have heard that.
Other police departments like Racine and Oak Creek allow their officers to listen to the radio with the expectation the volume is kept low. Kenosha found a solution.
And the fact that they're doing this, what do you think about it?
I think it's a good idea.
And all cars are expected to be finished sometime in March. On your side in Kenosha, Nick Montes, today's TMJ4.
Nick, thank you. And we also reached out to MPD. They do not allow officers to patrol with the radio on.
Today, the family of a man killed by Kenosha police says that they will release the findings of an investigation into their son's death.
Michael Bell was killed by police in 2004. Since his death, his father has put up numerous billboards in southeast Wisconsin questioning police investigations. His family used money from a civil settlement to hire 2 private investigators. The family says the findings show an alleged conspiracy by the Kenosha Police Department. The findings of the investigation will be released at 1 o'clock this afternoon.
I'm Hillary Mintz here in Kenosha at the municipal building here where the Police and Fire Commission just wrapped up a meeting here. Michael Bell today handed over many of his findings from his own private investigation, many affidavits, and he hopes that they will review that. It's all related to his son's death. It happened 8 years ago, and he was killed by Kenosha police officers. He thinks that it was a big cover-up and many officers lied about what happened, and he hopes that the Police and Fire Commission will urge the FBI to start an investigation into this. Right now, we have learned that the FBI has met with the police chief, but no word on if they will open up an investigation. In Kenosha, Hillary Mintz, WISN 12 News.
New at 10, the father of a man killed by police 10 years ago helped create the law used to probe the death of Dontre Hamilton. This is the first time Michael Bell saw his law take effect. While not perfect, Bell calls this a step in the right direction.
Our family, when my son got killed, didn't get the type of scrutiny that this case had gotten.
Michael Bell pushed for and won a new state law requiring an outside agency to investigate officer-involved shootings. In 2004, his son, Michael Bell Jr., was shot and killed by Kenosha police. Just days before Dontre Hamilton was killed, Bell's law took effect.
I think it contributed to a step forward. I don't think it's completely done.
Bell says there's still more work to do because that decision to charge still belongs to the local district attorney. Bell worries the relationship between police and prosecutors is so close that decision will always be biased. So the next step in his fight, allow an outside review board to decide when officers break the law.
Review this independently outside of the DA because the DA and police, they share such a close relationship together.
Right now at 10, the Milwaukee police officer who shot Dontre Hamilton 14 times at Red Arrow Park has been fired. Chief Ed Flynn says Officer Christopher Manny made an error in judgment when he patted down Dontre Hamilton last April.
Hamilton's family is pleased with today's firing, but they still want criminal charges against the officer.
We have team coverage. Charles Benson talked to the Hamilton family.
But we begin with Katie Crowther, who has more on Chief Flynn's comments. Katie?
Carol and Mike, Chief Flynn says by not following proper police training and protocol, Officer Christopher Manny put himself in a position where he had to use deadly force, and now he must be held accountable. It was April 30th in Red Arrow Park, where Officer Christopher Manny came into contact with 31-year-old Dontre Hamilton, who was known to be mentally ill.
When you are approaching a mentally ill person who is not being engaged in violent behavior or criminal behavior, there's a set of trainings and approaches that you are taught. And you don't go hands-on and start frisking somebody only because they appear to be mentally ill.
That's what Chief Flynn says Officer Manny did. A pat-down mistake that led to a violent confrontation and the use of deadly force. We went to Officer Manny's home to try and get comment from him. There are some accusations that Flynn's decision to fire Officer Manny is politically motivated, a claim he denies.
This is my decision alone, based on the facts of this case and our responsibility to hold ourselves accountable. And anybody else who says something else is doing their own brand of politicking.
There's already a Facebook page in support of Officer Manny and rumors that fellow officers will be taking action in protest of the chief's decision.
There's certainly going to be a subset of police opinion that's going to say, hey, wait a minute, we had a copper who was fighting for his life, used deadly force, and you're firing him. Okay? I understand that. My inner cop is not dead.
But Flynn says he
have the latest at 10. The Kenosha police officer who shot and killed a man Saturday had just returned to the force after shooting another man just 10 days earlier.
Police just identified the man killed this weekend as 26-year-old Aaron Seiler. 12 News' Nick Bohr is live on Kenosha's west side where Seiler was shot. Nick?
Right, Joyce, this is where that chase ended when the car crashed into the building there. You might even be able to see some tire tracks in the grass down there. Seiler then got out and was shot right here. Police say he pulled a gun on them at the time and he was shot. You can see there's some flowers that have been placed here as well by friends who were learning now that the officer involved had just shot someone else not 2 weeks ago.
Oh, a lot of questions, and I would be incensed if the community didn't have a lot of questions too.
The fatal shooting Saturday certainly has the attention of police justice advocate Michael Bell, whose own son was killed by Kenosha police 10 years ago. His efforts led to the new state law requiring all police shootings be investigated by an outside agency, in this case the State Department of Justice. 26-year-old Aaron Seiler was shot by police Saturday morning following a police car chase that led to a foot chase. Police say Seiler came at them with a knife and was shot. Remarkably, the officer who fired, Pablo Torres, was on his first day back on the job after he shot and wounded a man March 4th who came at officers with several knives. That man survived. Torres was cleared in that case. Seiler's family tells 12 News they're grieving and still trying to get their questions answered and have asked Bell for his help.
They have been making funeral arrangements, and I'm telling you, I know what it's like to sit in that funeral parlor, have a director come in there and have to make arrangements to bury your child. It's horrible.
The case, and that's what triggered an internal review.
Take a look at the January dashcam video outside Westtown Food and Liquor in Kenosha. This is what triggered an internal review and led to Officer Peter Bisciglia being suspended for 60 days.
In this isolated case, a police officer did some very bad things. He used excessive force. He lied in a police report.
Former Kenosha Alderman Kevin Mathewson shared the video and disciplinary reports with 12 News because he thinks the officer should have been fired.
Something that any average citizen does, they're going to be arrested and probably charged with the crime.
Police were called to the store because owner Sam Ali says employees caught a man trying to shoplift who refused to put the item back.
We tried to get the product, out of him, and let him go. Give him a chance.
Ali says the man returned the item but then refused to leave and argued with the officer.
He was doing his job On the other hand, I don't know if the other guy got hurt too. I mean, I feel bad for both ways.
Officer Bisciglia described the scene in the store as chaotic. The internal review found the officer's report was an inaccurate, incomplete, and untruthful account of the incident.
The men and women of the Kenosha Police Department do a fine job, and they hold integrity. It's just this officer, evident by the video and the police report, just made some big mistakes.
Now, the chief was unavailable to talk on camera tonight, but told us the police essentially policed themselves after reviewing the video. He says the discipline will cost the officer roughly $16,000 in lost pay and benefits. Coming up in our next half hour, we'll tell you what else the officer is facing. Live in the newsroom, Terry Sater, WISN 12 News. Kathy.
Two years ago, the Kenosha Police Department honored Officer Kendall West on its Facebook page for graduating from the police academy. Tonight, West is facing felony charges. West works here at the Kenosha Police Department. To avoid a conflict of interest, Kenosha asked the Racine Sheriff to investigate. They're holding him here in the county jail. The jail is holding West on misdemeanor disorderly conduct charges and 3 felonies: recklessly endangering safety, misconduct in public office, and battery in violation of a domestic abuse injunction. Kenosha's chief offered few details, writing only that the incident stemmed from a personal matter, adding, "Personal problems are something we all deal with. However, if the allegations are correct, I cannot condone his manner in dealing with them." The department has featured West repeatedly on its Facebook page, noting he previously worked as a police officer in Montgomery, Alabama, and was an infantry team leader in the Army. No one answered at the home West shares with his wife.
I was surprised.
Police have yet to reveal where the incident happened. Neighbors here say they saw nothing unusual Sunday morning.
Never any trouble next door. Very nice people.
Prosecutors will review the case, and police expect to release more details tomorrow when they return from the holiday break. In Kenosha, Colleen Henry, WISN 12 News.
Surveillance video shows Kenosha police officer Kendall West flying across the parking lot of the local medical center in his squad in uniform before attacking an ER doctor. Court records say the officer was angry after learning his wife was having an affair with the doctor. You can see her here with no shoes on in the lobby. Alderman Kevin Mathewson says he's appalled the officer is now avoiding jail time.
And he was basically given a slap on the wrist by the judge in the Racine District Attorney's office. It made me really sick to my stomach.
West accepted a plea deal from prosecutors and is paying just several $100s in fines. During tonight's Fire and Police Commission meeting, the chief here recommended that Officer West be terminated. Alderman Mathewson feels Officer West was shown leniency in court because of his position in the community. He's concerned West will become a police officer somewhere else and use the same type of judgment.
If you can't control your emotions in that type of situation, you definitely shouldn't be helping other people when their emotions are high.
In Kenosha, Christina Palladino, WISN 12 News.
Officer West has been on paid administrative leave since the beginning of the year.
A Kenosha police sergeant will be spending more than a month in jail starting next week. He's charged for driving drunk, causing an accident. New video showing the officer in Oak Creek at the time of the arrest. It shows him taking a field sobriety test and then later sitting in the back of an Oak Creek squad car. Katie Crowther is live from the Milwaukee County Courthouse with the sentencing.
Yeah, Shannon, the attorney for Sergeant Greg Manoli says he will likely be terminated from the Kenosha Police Department, potentially losing his 19-year career because of one bad decision. He apologized today in court.
For the pain and the incident that I caused, I sincerely apologize. I'd like to apologize to the citizens of Oak Creek and the citizens of Kenosha. And I'm sorry that I'm here in front of you, Your Honor. I accept full responsibility for what I did.
This all stems from a car crash in November of 2017. After watching a Packers game with a friend, Sergeant Manoli rear-ended another car near Ryan Road and Howell Avenue in Oak Creek. The man in the other car had a concussion and injuries to his back and knees. A responding officer says Sergeant Manoli was confused about which direction he had been heading, had bloodshot, glassy eyes, smelled like alcohol, and admitted to having some drinks. Sergeant Manoli initially agreed to perform field sobriety tests, but then refused. He was taken to a hospital where his blood alcohol content was found to be more than twice the legal limit.
Luckily, the injuries weren't as severe as they could have been. They could have been far, far worse based on the damage to the cars.
Sergeant Manoli can be released from jail for small intervals during his 40-day sentence if he proves he has a job interview or child care responsibility as a father.
This could very well end his career in law enforcement altogether. And that has been very difficult for Mr. Munley because he has a great love for the work that he does and the people he's able to help.
His driver's license will also be revoked for a year, and he must have a breathalyzer interlock device put in his car. He will also be required to go to counseling and make a donation to an organization that works to end alcohol abuse and or drunk driving. Reporting live from the courthouse, Katie Crowther, today's TMJ4.
All right, Katie, thank you. Kenosha police have not responded to our calls or emails for comments about the status of Manoli's job with the department. We want to keep drunk drivers off of the road, and stories like these are the reason why we started Project Drive Sober. If you have questions, story ideas related to our initiative, please email or call us, the number you see right there on your screen.
An emotional plea by Kenosha's police chief following the death of a little girl. He posted a letter on Facebook calling on his community to stop the violence. As 12 News' Christina Palladino reports, he's refusing to let little Serenity Rose's death become another statistic.
Seeing child abuse and domestic abuse and stuff, and sometimes I don't think we all take enough responsibility.
Kenosha Police Chief John Morrissey says the death of Serenity Rose has shaken him and his department deeply, hoping the immediate outcry following her death will not be forgotten. He posted a letter to Facebook.
This was just more me saying, got to try something. You know, I don't know that it'll save anybody's life.
The chief says his officers are still haunted by the scene of Serenity's death earlier this month. Investigators say her father slammed the 11-month-old to the ground several times after an argument with her mother.
An officer whose wife has lost 2 babies trying to have it, and you know, they think about, well, here's this beautiful little girl, I would have taken care of it.
Morrissey's letter references some sobering statistics, saying in part, quote, by the time you finish reading this article, more than 30 cases of child abuse will have been reported nationwide. By the end of today, that number will swell past 9,000. He hopes it'll serve as a wake-up call and ask people to report abuse so that the violence stops with Serenity's death.
The simplest thing you can do that doesn't cost anything is you can call.
Now, in his letter here, Chief Morrissey encourages people to keep several toll-free numbers nearby. These are anonymous hotlines you can call to report any suspected domestic or child abuse. We also have the numbers on our website, too, WISN.com. In the Web Center, Christina Palladino, WISN 12 News.
New at 6, Kenosha Police Chief John Morrissey is calling it quits. He plans to retire soon. Todd Hicks has that story from Kenosha.
The city's mayor says Chief Morrissey's announcement was made out of the blue. It came during Wednesday night's Fire and Police Commission meeting.
He had made up his mind to retire.
It's the decision by Kenosha's police chief John Morrissey that isn't a surprise for the city's mayor.
Chief and I had talked about it in the past. Almost every year it came up at the budget meetings, planning for the future.
Mayor Keith Bosman tells me the discussion was nothing more than chit-chat between friends.
Our discussions about his retirement date go back 3 years or so, which is really before all of the current events have happened.
That includes 2 officer-involved shootings by the same officer last month, one of which was fatal. And then there was the shooting of Michael Bell Jr. He was killed by a Kenosha officer back in 2004. Morrissey wasn't the chief at the time, but the legal battle lingered for years.
Bell incident, which is somewhat weighs, I think, on his decision. That goes back 10 years, I think. So that was before his watch.
Bell's father said this after learning of Morrissey's announcement. It is our hope that community leaders will see this as an opportunity for positive change and act accordingly. And the mayor says the police chief's retirement will most likely take place at the end of the year. In Kenosha, Todd Hicks, today's TMJ4.
And the Fire and Police Commission will take up the issue of a new chief after an official date for Morrissey's retirement has been announced.
Kenosha Police Chief John Morrissey answered questions in court about what he knew and when he found out a former officer planted evidence. Former Kenosha police officer Kyle Bars admitted he planted a bullet and a suspect's ID while executing the search warrant for a murder in 2014. Marquise Tibbs copped a plea agreement based on the evidence Kenosha police gathered. Now Tibbs is considering withdrawing that plea due to the crime the former officer is accused of committing.
I asked him if he could tell me why he did what he did, and he said, I can't. And I said, you won't or you can't. And he said, I won't.
Kenosha Police Chief John Morrissey talked about the now disgraced officer's actions. The defense wanted to know why Kenosha Police stopped its internal investigation, never pursued criminal charges against Bars, and didn't inform Tibbs of the planted evidence.
It should have been further investigated. I guess I dropped the ball there.
The special prosecutor assigned to the case believes there wasn't a systematic attempt to cover up Bars' crime.
I think what the chief testified to today is correct. I think the testimony that he gave was consistent.
The chief says Bars resigned before he could recommend firing.
Well, I believe planting the ID at the scene is absolutely wrong, and that's why I think Kyle understood I was going to recommend his termination to the Police and Fire Commission.
But defense attorney Terry Rose says the former officers and Kenosha Police response speak volumes to the Tibbs case and potentially others.
And I think this is extraordinarily serious because it goes to the very heart and integrity of the criminal justice process.
There's still no clear reason why Kyle Bars planted the evidence. The defendant Tibbs will let the judge know by next week if he wants the plea thrown out. Based on the testimony, a judge will make her decision. In Kenosha, Jamont Terry, today's TMJ4.
Now at 6, a former Kenosha police officer sentenced for planting evidence in a murder investigation. Kyle Bars admitted to the crime. He pled guilty last month. Good evening. I'm Shannon Sims.
And I'm Charles Benson. Despite a one-year sentence, he likely won't spend a day in prison. Eric Ross is live near New at 6 from the Kenosha County Courthouse.
Good evening. As long as Kyle Bars follows all the terms set forth in his probation and essentially doesn't get into any more trouble over the next year, his one-year prison sentence will vanish. Kyle Bars, once sworn in to uphold the law, admitted to breaking it.
Took actions that were improper, unethical, and inexcusable.
The 28-year-old former cop acknowledged he deliberately planted a suspect's ID and .22 caliber bullet in a backpack at a homicide scene.
By planting Tibbs' ID card and that .22 caliber bullet at the scene of a search warrant and a murder investigation and committing misconduct in public office, the defendant betrayed the public trust and his badge.
Bars appeared apologetic in court, but he nor his attorney could explain why he did it.
Everyone has asked him why, and the only thing that I can say to that is incredibly poor judgment.
The judge took into consideration Bars had no prior criminal history or problems with the police department.
In the almost 3.5 years I was a police officer, I responded to thousands of calls for service. I made thousands of good decisions, and yet my career as a police officer seems to be defined by one really bad one.
Barrs' conviction means he will no longer be allowed to work in law enforcement. As for the homicide investigation he tampered with, 3 men were convicted, 2 of whom are planning to appeal their sentences. For now, that's the very latest. Reporting live outside the Kenosha County Courthouse, Eric Ross, today's TMJ4 News.
All right, Eric, thanks for that update.
Kenosha priest will spend a month behind bars for having sexually charged conversations with 2 teenagers over the phone. Melissa McCready with Father Michael Nowak's reaction.
Father Mike admitted guilt today in court, but he went on to blame stress and his mother's death for his inappropriate actions. Now he'll serve jail time for that behavior. Father Michael Nowak came to court Thursday morning ready to accept punishment for making sexually explicit phone calls to 2 teenage girls.
Are you pleading guilty because you are guilty? Yes.
Nowak met the 14-year-old and 17-year-old at St. Teresa Blissou Parish while he was priest and they were parishioners. Nowak is now on administrative leave from the church. Today, the mother of one of those victims spoke out. We are hiding her identity to protect her daughter.
Months ago, my family's life was shattered by someone we knew, trusted, and had grown to love as part of our family, our own parish priest.
Nowak responded, crying for 30 seconds, then this.
Those 2 young girls, they're beautiful. They are beautiful, beautiful families, Your Honor. I can't say anything against those people. They're wonderful, and I love them, and I betrayed them.
The victim's family begged for jail time. Nowak asked for probation.
Stone sober, you picked up the phone and made these calls.
Yes, Your Honor. I believe there was a spiritual component there too.
With that, Judge Mary Kay Wagner sentenced Nowak to 30 days in jail, 1 year probation, and the hope that these 2 young victims can move on.
My daughter is now just a shell of the person she used to be.
The mother of one of the victims says she's satisfied with this sentence. Reporting in Kenosha, Melissa McCready, today's TMJ4.
More news now. Police body camera video released today shows Kenosha County Board Chairman Daniel Esposito's arrest.
He's accused of stealing more than $600 worth of items from the Menards in Kenosha. Katie Crowther shows us what happened when police showed up at his house.
Arrested outside his Pleasant Prairie home. What led to this?
Did you get anything else while you were there besides the firewood?
No. No, what?
It started with Kenosha County Board Chairman Daniel Esposito acting surprised as officers asked him about his trip to Menards.
They have you on camera there, grabbing some roofing tar.
Oh, really?
And taking that. So, is that something you did?
Daniel, just be honest with you.
Yeah,
So
yeah, it's at my place, yeah. Okay. But I had a ticket for it. I mean, I can.
Police say surveillance video shows Esposito taking more than $600 worth of this roofing tar and leaving through the guard gate without paying. Sure enough, Esposito admitted having the tar, but couldn't come up with the receipt for it.
I bought tar, but yeah, I don't have the ticket, so I have the 3 gallons of tar.
Yeah, we know.
Yeah, okay, so yeah, I took it.
Esposito is charged with felony retail theft. He did not return my calls. I did reach out to other Kenosha County board members, but they're declining to comment as well. Because this case involves a county leader, it is being handled by the Walworth County District's Attorney's Office. Reporting in Kenosha, Katie Crowther, today's TMJ4.
The arrest is captured on camera. Mary Magdalene Moser handcuffed and pinned to the wall inside the Kenosha County Administration Building. She was there Tuesday night to attend the county's board meeting. Did you go there expecting you would have some pushback from law enforcement or anyone trying to let you into the meeting?
I figured they would try to say no, but they would ultimately let me in.
Instead, sheriff's officials tell 12 News a captain consulted with the board chairman who denied Moser access to the meeting. The video shows that captain blocking the elevator even as Moser presses the button, all as the meeting went on without public comment.
Are there any citizens' comments?
No.
Hearing none, citizens' comments are closed.
At that moment, I was being thrown up against the wall and handcuffed for trying to participate.
Moser tells me her rights to access a government meeting were violated. She points to the county's own agenda for the meeting on its website, which notes members of the public are asked not to attend the meeting in person and strongly encouraged to submit comments in writing. It does not explicitly prohibit anyone. So in your opinion, was this a violation of open meetings laws?
In my opinion, I do think it is. I think that there's been steps that have been taken, streaming it online, having a number where you could call in. But quite frankly, if we're still meeting in person, our residents should be able to meet in person as well.
According to the Sheriff's Department, Board Chairman John O'Day had the final word on denying Moser access. Reached by phone Wednesday, O'Day told me he had no comment and referred questions to the county's Corporation Counsel.
They know that that they had to let me in. And I don't know if they think I'm going to be intimidated by 2 citations for, over $1,500, but I'm not intimidated in the least.
In Kenosha County, Derek Rose, WISN 12 News.
Our other big story at 6 questions tonight about a routine procedure and how a Kenosha County inmate ended up paralyzed.
Correctional officers entered the man's cell to restrain him. The I-Team's Jermont Terry explains what happened next. Jermont?
Mike, surveillance cameras captured the incident. Tonight, investigators are looking over that video. They have to determine if this was excessive force or an accident. But the men's attorney questions how a serious injury like this can even happen. A few weeks ago, emergency crews were called to the Kenosha County Detention Center. Inmate Sean Bialis could not move.
When someone is in a facility, the correctional facility personnel are now responsible for their safety.
According to the Kenosha County Sheriff's Department, Bialis was injured after correction officers were called into his cell. They were trying to place him in the restraint chair.
As a result of those actions, he suffered very, very serious injuries, including permanent paralysis.
Attorney Jonathan Safran represents Bialis. He questions if excessive force was used when 6 guards entered the cell and tried to restrain him.
But it certainly concerns us that this severe of an injury can occur.
But the Sheriff's Department's attorney claims there was a need to enter the cell.
He was a threat to himself, and that's what prompted the need for the use of the restraint chair.
Bialis was in the detention center for an outstanding warrant for disorderly conduct and obstructing an officer. The 21-year-old has been in and out of jail since age 17 for several offenses, including resisting an officer. Is it possible that your client contributed to his own injuries?
Anything is possible.
We're still investigating in terms of what happened, not only in the moments leading up to these events, but what happened in the course of that day.
The Kenosha County Sheriff's Department originally said it believes the staff acted in accordance with our policy and procedures. The incident was caught on camera and will likely be key in this investigation.
Until we get a chance to see that, we don't know enough information.
And tonight, the Racine County Sheriff's Department is leading this investigation. The 6 correction officers involved are still on the job as the case is under review. As for Bialis, he remains in the hospital tonight. Back to you.
All right, thanks, Jermont.
Investigators are looking into the death of an inmate at the Kenosha County Jail. They tell us around 7 this morning, jail staff found the inmate in his cell with no pulse. Emergency crews responded and determined the man was dead. They are not giving us his name at this time, but tell us he is being held on a serious felony charge.
And out of nowhere, boom. Yeah. And then nobody will stop talking about it for weeks.
All right.
But everyone knows.
Now at 5, people who live nearby frustrated with the gun violence. A Kenosha police officer shot today while responding to a complaint of a car break-in. That shooter ran and has still not been found. Tony Atkins has the latest on the investigation.
Several agencies are out here investigating after an officer was shot in Kenosha by a suspect who is still on the run. An interrupted transmission as an officer struck by gunfire calls for help just after 5 Saturday morning.
I'm in the middle of the road.
Kenosha police say the officer was responding to a call of an illegal entry of a vehicle nearby on the 4600 block of Sheridan Road. As they investigated, the officer came in contact with someone who they say matched their description. Shortly after, the shots were exchanged and the officer was hit. Police say they don't know if the suspect was also shot.
It's 2020. We got a coronavirus pandemic going around. We don't need gun violence too.
Nathan Ortiz lived in the area for 20 years. He says he's happy to know the officer, a 30-year-old with 2 years of experience with the force, will be okay. As for the suspect, he says,
good luck hiding. You won't be able to hide forever, not in this small town.
And right now, the Wisconsin Department of Justice is handling the investigation. Reporting in Kenosha, Tony Atkins, TMJ4 News.